I'm Chantel. I'm with Career Services, Career Internship Student Employment Services. We are downstairs, located in sub-room 177. If you haven't been by lately, come on by. We've got some new digs down there, new office setting, and everything's remodeled. It's really beautiful. So if you haven't been by there, if you've never been by there, definitely come by. Stop in and see us. We've got some great services, which I'm going to go over here quite soon. Our mission statement, our job is to engage you in the career planning process through self-assessment and understanding of what is available in the world of work, so you can set goals and market yourself. We'll help you connect with employers. That's part of our job. To embark you on a successful career path, whatever you determine that to be. We realize we're all individuals. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, places we want to go, things we want to do with our lives, and we try to help you figure that out because you're kind of in this this path of where do I go from here. How we do that, we have mycatcareers.com. If you're not registered on that website, please get registered. It's where all of the job information, the internships are posted, student employment opportunities if you want to work while you're going to school, full-time employment after you graduate, all the information about career fairs on there. So get registered at mycatcareers.com. We have career coaching and advising downstairs. We have some wonderful career coaches that are going to help you go through some of the process and try to figure out what you like to do. They'll help you with resumes, they'll help you with job applications, they'll help you with interview strategies and techniques. They'll do mock interviews with you. It's great service. It's all free for you guys, so come down and take advantage of that. We have on-campus interviews several times a week, actually, especially from Career Fair on. We have companies coming in and interviewing for jobs that they're hiring for, not just internships, but full-time permanent jobs right in our office, using our rooms, our meeting rooms, and interviewing students. So to do that, you also have to get signed up on mycatcareers.com, so be sure you get that done. We do, like I said, the resume critiques, mock interviews. Also, after you graduate from school, don't just write us off. We're still there for you. We're still there to help alumni find jobs if they're doing career transitions, anything like that, we're there. And there are definitely employers out there that are looking for alumni experienced help. There's a whole job board downstairs that's full of those types of jobs. We have the career fair. We have workshops just as this. We have other presentations. And all available for you guys. So please take advantage of all those services we offer. This is our career model. There's handouts, the yellow sheets are on the table if you want to take one. Basically what this does is work through your college career and helps you kind of navigate into the professional world. You start with your self-assessment, and this is a lot of what the career coaches, this is what they follow and how they help you through the years. Start with your self-assessment, what interests you, what motivates you, what do you like, what do you dislike, what's a good fit, what do you want in the future, what kind of lifestyle do you want, where do you want to live, where do you not want to live, all those things. They try to help you kind of figure that out. These things will change through the years, even in college, from one year to the next. Those will change, things will come up, things will happen in your life, so you continually kind of come back and reassess things. But that's definitely where you start. From there you go on to looking at things like what can I do with a major in workshops. These are the things I like, these are the things I value, where do I go from there, where do I start? We can help you pick out classes to explore different opportunities, stuff like that. So it kind of goes freshman, sophomore, junior. Once we figure those things out and help you kind of get a path going, start setting some goals, putting plans in action, kind of get an idea of where you're going. Those last 2 years of college, you really focus on the things that really interest you. You do your internships, do some volunteer opportunities. If you don't get anything else out of this, please do an internship. Most valuable thing you can do in your college career. There's study abroad opportunities. Last week we heard in liberal studies about lots of experience and knowledge and just wisdom that was gained from some study abroad and some traveling abroad type opportunities. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, we can help hook you up with that. Come down and see us. And then we'll move into our hopefully senior year. We're getting ready to network. We're getting ready to talk to employers, mock interviewing, going to career fairs, putting your resume together, and really getting out there and working with the employers. You get a job offer, we'll help you negotiate salaries, benefits, moving expenses, all that kind of stuff. We'll help you with those those next step of those challenges, I guess. So tonight we have our esteemed panel. Bridget Kill, she is the registrar at Yellowstone National Park. Courtney Kramer over here on this side, in this corner. She works for the city of Bozeman. She's a historic preservation officer. And then in the middle here we have Derek Strawn. He's the AP history teacher at Bozeman Senior High. So welcome everybody. And I'm just going to turn it over to them. They're going to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about them. We'll go from there. We gotta stay.
Yeah. So I'm Bridget Kill. I actually am an alum of MSU. I got my master's here in '04 in history. My undergraduate is completely unrelated in elementary education. I worked as a teacher for a little while. I was a bank teller. I've done pretty much any job out there, pizza delivery, you name it. I ended up in the master's program after renewing my teaching certificate. I got back into school and realized I actually really enjoyed it and decided to pursue a master's in history with the idea of becoming a secondary ed teacher. But when they told me I actually would have to go back and get another degree in secondary ed, I decided that $90,000 into the educational system in Montana was a little too much for me, so I did not do that, and actually ended up in my career as a result of Professor Tim McCain's recommendation when this position had come open. And it wasn't necessarily the registrar position. I got my foot in the door through what they call the Student Temporary Employment Program that the federal government utilizes, although I think they're shifting that title around a little bit, so I don't know if you'd be able to find much information out there on that. But that was a way for me to non-competitively get hired through the position. In the federal government, when you go to apply for a job, you have to compete with many other applicants, and they grade and rate your application, and those at the top are the only ones applicable, so often students aren't able to compete in those fields. So the STEP program allowed that hiring process to sort of alleviate the certificate, kind of going through the usual channels, which is usajobs.gov. If you're interested in federal employment, there's a multitude of jobs out there in every career field you can imagine, not only within the country but abroad, in the Department of Defense and so forth. So needless to say, I got my foot in the door in '03 as a student, worked through '04 until I graduated, and then was able to get what they call a term position, which is a 4-year contract with the Park Service as a museum technician. And I didn't realize that museum was an option when I was working, when I was doing my graduate degree here. There was no real museum studies program at that time. So when Tim had mentioned that this was an option, it hadn't even occurred to me. So it fit very well with my personality type. Detail-oriented is a better way than saying anal retentive. I like to organize things, so the museum field was right up my alley. I'm not sure if I'm getting off topic here yet or not, but I think an internship, as Chantal had mentioned, sorry I was going to call you Courtney, I knew that was right, is a great opportunity to see what's out there. You don't know if it's a fit until you get in there, and the Student Temporary Employment Program was paid, which was an upside, so it wasn't an unpaid internship, so I actually was making an income, and a very good one at that. I've worked up from a GS, they have the grade system, this is, sometimes I get the lingo of the government, so my alphabet soup gets a little bit out of control, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you guys are laughing because you know what I mean. So my GS position when I started was a 6, which is right around, I think, $30,000 a year, just so that you guys are knowing what annually this is the field has as far as opportunity goes. And I was able to get the term position for 4 years as a 7, and rapidly sort of was able to, after my 4 years, stepped into a permanent position. So they're never going to get rid of me now. And I'm a GS9, and annually I get not only a, well, COLA, we haven't got a cost of living increase in a number of years because of the budget, but I do get an annual increase with the way they do it is that it's a GS step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and you get an annual increase annually for 4 years, and then it goes to every other year. So I think now I'm at $50,000 a year just in that short period of time. So it's a great opportunity. The private sector, I don't think museums generally pay very well. They're soft-funded. It's difficult to get grants. So that's sort of how I ended up where I'm at. And the museum registrar, I know no one really knows what that is or what I do. So just to give you an idea of what I do before I go on too far, but I basically process all the incoming collections from various private donors, research permit collections, so biologists, microbiologists, geologists, paleontologists, all the ologists that collect things. I document those, I do loan paperwork, I do the legal sort of documents to gain ownership of the materials that are donated. And that's not just the museum collections, natural history and cultural materials, but it's also archival documents as well. That's it in a nutshell.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm surprised there are so many people here and that we all could fit in this room. My name is Derek Strawn, and I'm also an MSU graduate. I got an MA in history in '92, and I specialized primarily in the American West and worked mostly with Mary Murphy. She was the chair of my committee. While I was a grad student, I had an opportunity to sort of fell in my lap to spend a summer on the Fort Belknap Reservation. Some tribal elders were looking for someone to sort of gather oral histories for them and document the cultural significance of the Little Rocky Mountains, which at the time was the site of the largest cyanide heap leach gold mine in the Western Hemisphere. And so I got a chance to sort of hang out with a variety of different people who were involved in the traditional cultural life of the Gros-Ventre Assiniboine tribes, attended a lot of ceremonies and gathered around 40 oral histories, and then came back and sort of based my professional paper on that work. It led, I didn't realize it at the time, but about 2 weeks after I graduated, there was an opening with the city of Bozeman to become the city's historic preservation officer. And so I took that job, wanting to stay in Montana, and just glad to find anything kind of related to my field in history in Bozeman, a town that I grew up in. And so I worked for the city for 9 years, and toward the end of that tenure was realizing that there really wasn't another job with the city that I wanted. They were encouraging me to become a planner or somehow get involved with some other aspect of city government, and I realized what I really wanted to do was be a historian and continue to do work related to history. And so more and more I started kind of redefining the job and trying to do more writing, more public presentations, more publications. I started writing a column for the Chronicle, which ran for about 10 years, a monthly column on local history issues and preservation. I started consulting on the side, doing historic preservation work, and gradually realized that what I really wanted to do, what I loved the most about the city job, and I did like it a lot of it. What I liked about it was the educational component, meeting with students, working with the general public, teaching people about history and sharing that with folks. My wife is a high school teacher, and so after some consideration, we decided that it might be a smart move for me to get a teaching certification. So I took off a year, and taking about 20 credits for a couple semesters, was able to get my student teaching done in time for there to be 4 new openings at the high school. And I sort of had the inside story that this was coming down the pike, because my wife knew that this was happening, that they would be hiring, and so we sort of timed things to see if I would have a chance to maybe get into the teaching profession. And luckily I did. And the thing that was really cool about, I love teaching. I've been doing it now for about 10 years. I teach advanced placement classes at Bozeman High, U.S. history, but also advanced placement American studies, which is a pretty innovative and fun way to teach. There aren't that many high schools that have American studies programs, but I team teach with a teacher from the English department. And later I can tell you more about that if you would like. I love working with students and really love just having the ability to be in a very creative profession teaching. But another thing I really love about my job is there's quite a bit of time for me to do other history-related things on the side. And so in the summer, I spend a lot of time researching and writing and publishing. I'm still consulting. I've done small-scale projects like getting houses on the National Register. I've been involved in really large projects, like I was the lead historian on the Butte Anaconda National Historic Landmark designation, which is the largest NHL in the entire country. I now do a radio show on KJLT, which some of you might have heard of. It's called the Montana Medicine Show. It's a little bit like Christy the Wordsmith, but it's just a 2-minute little Montana history vignette. And so that's funded through the Corporation of Public Broadcasting and the Montana Committee for the Humanities. And so I write for that and record those shows every month. And I'm just always kind of looking for different ways to sort of do history. And I think what I feel most fortunate to have is the opportunity to do more academic work, and then also to do things that are maybe a little bit more tangible, where the products of what I'm working on can be seen pretty readily. And for me, it's a really nice mix professionally.
I'm Courtney Kramer, and I am actually, what do we want to say, 4 generations removed from Derek. I actually am the current historic preservation officer for the city. I graduated from MSU with a degree in history in 2005, and in August of 2004, I did know about the Museum Studies program, and I knew that I was interested in historic architecture. Some of you might remember this little old guy on the A&E channel, and he would come up every Sunday afternoon and talk about the old houses, and he'd have a bow tie. I can't remember his name, but he's at the University of Virginia, and I'd be there with my Legos at 8 years old watching this old guy talk about houses. And so I wanted to combine museum studies with historic architecture, and the museum studies program just didn't really have that fit. And so instead, it was suggested that I do an internship at the City of Bozeman's Preservation Department. Did that and was able to parlay that into, I think it was a 3-credit internship in the fall, 6 in the spring, no credits but paid in the summer, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Kentucky. And I have a master's degree in historic preservation, and right as I was leaving, the position opened with the City of Bozeman, and I was able to apply with the city. And so I've been back in Montana now for 4.5 years. It's been interesting. I was telling Derek earlier, nothing has changed in 10 years. We're still fighting over the same buildings and having the same issues. Kind of in my field right now, if I want to advance, I've got to learn how to count parking spaces and signage equations. I don't really care about that stuff. So we're looking at trying to figure out exactly what does this preservation program want to be when it grows up, which is a great opportunity to craft some public policy, which is fun for me. I enjoy the history component of historic preservation. There are a couple of different avenues. There's the history of how this landscape or this place came to be. There's the history of the architecture and how maybe it got distilled down from Gothic architecture to this little house in the western United States happens to have a certain type of gabled roof. And so people approach it from that. People also approach it from the finance and development perspective. There are some really great projects happening in the state with tax credits and interesting financing models to get buildings rehabbed. The Sears building in Uptown Butte, if you ever get a chance, was in really rough shape 3 years ago, and a guy bought it, and actually he went to Montana. He started at MSU, broke up with a girl, and went to Missoula. A U of M alum came back from New York. He's only a couple years older than me, bought the Sears building, put in $10 million, a $2 million preservation tax credit, a $2 million low-income housing tax credit, and he has a building that is beautiful and is being used for the first time in 30 years. So there's some really interesting stuff happening in the field. My favorite parts would be getting to interact with the board members on the advisory board that I get to work with. There's some really great people in this community who volunteer their time, archaeologists, history professors, community members who just happen to live in a historic district, architects and engineers. There's some good people to work with. The least favorite part would definitely be when I have to count parking spaces. You will never believe how good a liberal arts degree has gotten at spreadsheets. And I think, you know, if I were to give advice to somebody going specifically into the preservation field, it would be, you know, get a history degree, get an architecture degree, get a preservation degree, but find a special niche for it. Become a fundraiser for historic preservation. Become someone who creates really great fundraising websites, or creates really interesting historic walking tours that are a phone app where you just scan the barcode and it pops up on your smartphone. You know, find a niche and find a way to make yourself really valuable to the organization that you come into. I've enjoyed it a lot, and it will be interesting to see what happens in the field as a whole. And with this city, there's some really great people, but like you said, getting pushed into that, no, you've got to be a planner role. You're like, people call me about subdivisions and annexations. Let me have you talk to our secretary. Tara is still in. Tara. You will all find out, if you haven't already, that the secretary really runs the show everywhere, not just in the history department. With that, I think, are we taking questions now? Or?
We can definitely open up. You guys have questions for us? We've got enough people here. We should be able to fill some time with some questions.
I can elaborate a little more on the aspects of my job, just to sort of detail out, come to see our collections there. We have 300,000 items in the collections, that not just the historic items such as the Thomas Moran Yellowstone, right? You guys know who Thomas Moran is. He was the artist that accompanied the Hayden expedition, which was what actually instituted the creation of Yellowstone in 1872. It was that expedition. Moran's work, along with photographs of William Henry Jackson, which we also have in the collection, were taken to Congress, which was then how Yellowstone was established. So while there's those cultural items, we also have biology items, right? So I work directly with Doug Smith, who is the lead wildlife biologist for the Wolf Project, and working on documenting the collection of wolf skulls that we have. We have upwards of now 90 some odd in the collection, and now they're looking at collecting postcranials. So my degree in history has been applicable up to a certain point, but now I've had to learn all about the anatomy of a wolf. So I can tell you all of the, there's 320 bones in a wolf, 321 if it's male. And odd things that I never thought I would ever learn. So microbiology, for example, having to call up a microbiologist who has a culture. I'm a historian, no idea. What do you have? How do you preserve that? How am I supposed to catalog a culture that lives in a petri dish? So these have been issues that I've had to sort of deal with and resolve as I've worked through my job. I always say that I have to know a little bit about everything, but I'm not an expert in any one of it. Otherwise, I'd have to have about 25 degrees to know about the paleontology collection that we have of trilobites, our geology collection, which is extremely small, oddly enough, given that Yellowstone is a geologic park, needs to say. And then, of course, all of the various species within the park and all of their complicated issues, bison being a large issue that has come up. So it's challenging, it's interesting, and it sort of makes me have to look beyond just one narrow field and look at all of those fields and sort of know enough about them to catalog and also to speak to the public. I do tours twice a week in the collections, which whether I love or hate is part of my job. So.
A lot of don't touch that.
Yes, please keep your hands in your pockets. And the worst, I have to say, are the elder hostile groups that come in. Frankly, 60 plus, don't listen. They just don't. The kids are better because they'll just put their hands in their pockets and get rid of their gum. But it's fun. Yeah. No.
I refuse to go on old house tours now because I'm like, no, I don't want to see the official tour. I want to go in the basement. I'm like, yeah.
That's in the other upside. So, for instance, I went to Little Bighorn Battlefield to assist with them packing their collections. I thought I'd see more cool things. Custer's jockstrap, that was the highlight of that collection. And it wasn't big, I felt very bad. I also, next week I get to go to the Tetons to assist with packing up what's called the Vernon Collection. It's a significant ethnographic collection of Native American related materials. He was a gentleman who collected for a number of years upwards of 30,000 artifacts. I helped years ago pack up the first portion, and then we're going to go back down to help pack up the second. They're sending it down to one of our conservation labs down in Tucson for conservation work on all of those materials. So last time I was there, I got to pack Sitting Bull's blanket, some ghost dance materials, So I get to not just look at these things behind glass, I get to touch them and handle them and pack them very gently. It's a lot of, so it's history with my hands on it, and that's the part I think I love the most about my job. I think the best day I had was finding some letters in our backlog, and we have a very extensive backlog, meaning items that haven't been documented in our collection yet. And there were 3 letters, one signed by Buffalo Bill Cody, another signed by Theodore Roosevelt, and another signed by Gifford Pinchot. That was a great day. I was very happy. It was like, oh, I don't know how many people had actually seen those letters since they were sort of squirreled away, so I loved that. That was very cool. And they were very personalized letters to a gentleman who was the Yellowstone Forest Preserve manager who was appointed by Roosevelt at that time. So there's a lot of things to think about in the museum field and different opportunities. And the Park Service is a pretty extensive museum management program. You can go online and look up on nps.gov. It'll take you to the National Park Service general website, and there is a section there for museum collections.
I could expand a little bit on why why somebody with a history degree might be necessary in the preservation world. So there are a couple of federal laws out there. If you spend any federal money on anything, you've got to make sure it doesn't destroy a historic resource. So that means that the Department of Transportation hires historians to make sure that when they put in a new bridge, the bridge that they are taking out isn't historic in its own right. Maybe it was designed by a very famous bridge designer. Maybe it's the first example of this type of a bridge west of the Mississippi, maybe it's et cetera. And so there are many historians and departments of transportation. Every state has a state historic preservation office that has a staff of historians and architectural historians who will work with that in that process and doing review of both private and public buildings. The National Register of Historic Places also has its own review mechanism, and Derek has worked to list buildings, and so there are all types of little areas in which a historian is needed, but you wouldn't think that the Army Corps of Engineers would have an entire staff of historians. And so really, I have a couple of friends who went to work as student interns for the Army Corps of Engineers and are making twice what I make doing history work, in the Tennessee Valley with all of those New Deal programs and post-war stuff as they start to look at the environmental impact. One of them had to go, there was some serious flooding in Tennessee in I think the spring of 2010 maybe. He had to go out and check this big dam that was built as an earth and fill dam in the 60s. He's like, I'm gonna wear one of the orange life jackets, and just start poking at it. Don't think that would inspire public confidence, but he's a rather large guy too. You can imagine an offensive lineman with like the little orange. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. They're just not necessarily obvious for those of us that get a history degree, but the most important thing that we are all able to do is take a broad swath of information and boil it down to a couple of very important sentences. And there's a lot of companies out there that need someone that can do that.
So I have a question, kind of along those lines. How did each of you find your job? I mean, are they all jobs that generally are advertised? Do you have to know somebody? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Start there.
The preservation job, I don't quite remember how I found that. I think it was, maybe just a matter of seeing an advertisement in a newspaper. It was good timing for me. I had just gotten my graduate degree and, was sort of in the process of deciding whether I was going to get a PhD or not. And I was like 2 weeks after I graduated, the job opened up. So timing is a major factor. And I'm sure a lot of you are kind of looking at the economy right now and thinking about, you sort of have two strikes going against you right now, if I can be blunt. One is you're in a field that has got some limits in terms of you know, what's available and what's not, and then you're working against an economy that's a little bit dicey right now. So, you know, if I can give any advice before I turn it over to these guys, I mean, I think it would be to get as much experience as you can, as quickly as you can. I would diversify, and anything that is related to history, where you can volunteer or do an internship or work for a 2-week job, or anything you can do to sort of build up that resume and create some options. I think that will make you much more marketable. And I also think, you know, teaching is always, you know, an option, and it's a good option. I could talk a lot about that if you'd like me to, but I think that the smartest school districts are looking for people who have got some additional professional experience beyond just, you know, I worked at a bakery before I went to grad school, you know, and that's something, but if you can do something sort of related to social studies or history, I think that can be really beneficial to you.
Mine was sheer luck. I mean, just having an internship with the city. That was the only, well, I interned with them and then I went to graduate school, and I will tell you a secret about graduate school. I was accepted to a variety of places, and I could have walked out of graduate school with an Ivy League degree and $120,000 in debt. I went to a state school in Kentucky and walked out with $24,000 in debt, and that's a huge difference when you're making $36,000 a year and, you know, trying to be a grown-up and all of those things. And so look at that really hard and fast. If you get that Ivy League degree, that's great, but you've probably got to live in New York City in order to pay it off for the next 20 years. And so think about what those decisions mean. I have a coworker who did get an Ivy League degree and then followed her dream to come west and had $82,000 in loans and started out with a salary of $24,000 a year. The numbers don't lie, and that's ugly. So think about that. And I was able, with my graduate degree, to get a research associateship with them. They have a program where they put students to work doing public history while you're going to school, and that was really helpful in keeping those costs down. And then interned with their transportation cabinet, doing research. They're putting in a new bridge over at the Ohio River to Cincinnati, and we surveyed an entire neighborhood and what are the historic portions, what needs to be saved, where can the bridge on-ramp go. I mean, transportation engineering is pretty unsexy, but it pays the bills. So, and mine, again, was just having interned for the city and being able to come back to Bozeman was really lucky. My geographical limitations were anywhere within a 10-hour drive of Lake Coeur d'Alene, where my parents have a place, and I got lucky, really.
I hate to say that is a similar situation to mine. Tim Lakin had told me about the position, and I was sort of at the right place at the right time when the other sort of the term position opened up. It is a tough market right now. The federal government, I don't know if they're hiring a whole lot. Again, the usajobs.gov, you can put in historian, and there are many positions that come up with various different federal agencies, whether it's the DoD or the DOI, Department of the Interior. And it's a good thing to think about, diversifying and getting other experience. And we do have the Park Service in Yellowstone. We have an internship program with the History Department here. I highly suggest that you get an internship. You can get your foot in the door, and frankly, every edge counts. And if they know your name on that resume, it's going to make a difference. Rather than Bob Smith, they're going to know who you are and know your face. In fact, right now we had one intern this summer who has come back this year as a step hire, because as long as he is registered as a student, he's in the PhD program in the History Department, he can work non-competitively, so he didn't have to throw his resume into the mix and try and get a job there. And frankly, there are no jobs right now in our office available. We have 3 people on staff, aside from our intern, our museum tech, who is not an intern anymore, who's paid. So those are things to consider.
Questions? Just me and the other one. Tell us about your work environment. So do you work in an office? Do you get out? I mean,
I get to go out occasionally when I can. I've had the opportunity to go out in the field with archaeologists who also happens to be a friend, so that's been fun. 4-day backcountry trips to do assessments of historic backcountry cabins with various botanists to survey the native species plants there. Sort of looking at fire buildup, fire assessments, things like that. I'm trying to press to get to the backcountry cabins to look for historic objects. I'm going to try and fly that through my supervisor. Of course, training would be required because they're in the backcountry after all. So, yeah, otherwise I work in a research facility, the Heritage and Research Center in Gardner. I have a window, but it looks out into the other office space. It's not the basement where it used to be in the Albright Visitor Center. I don't know if anybody's been to Yellowstone, but sewage used to leak into that space. We have a rare building. We're one of the few facilities within the Park Service that has a new building. Our collection space prior to our new facility was inadequate, to say the very least, with radon, leaking in, so health issues aside from the sewage. So it's a vast difference from our former space. So it's a state-of-the-art facility with the humidity controls, temperature controls, security, the whole 9 yards.
Do you work year-round then?
I do. I'm a year-round employee, and there's not many of us in Yellowstone. I think in the summer, not including the concessions employees, but Park Service staff, I think it's about a 3,000 employee, but that just balloons in the summertime, which is when we get a lot of seasonal workers that come in. So I think year-round it goes down to like 500, because really in the interior in the wintertime you've got Old Faithful as the only location, with I think the exception of warming huts around the park, but those aren't staffed. So.
Well, I work at Bozeman High School, but I also have an office at home where I do, my consulting, my writing work, that kind of stuff. Try as much as possible to kind of get out. Having some preservation experience is a really nice thing. I teach a class that's 2 hours long, so we frequently take students out on walking tours or that sort of thing. Anything we can to kind of mix up the routine of teaching. But most of the time that I'm out and about or doing field work is in the summer, and then it just kind of depends. I mean, sometimes I'm living in another town, sometimes I'm just taking trips to archives in different places, or it just varies in terms of my work environment.
Mine is in an office, very computer heavy, and let's see, about 5 coworkers. We have a really great staff, really great directors. Part of the joy of our office right now is that we are about 4 blocks from City Hall, which helps buffer the craziness that can be local government a little bit and let us just focus on getting stuff done. I get to do a couple times a year walking tours as education and outreach, and get to work with various organizations throughout the community, including the school district and MSU and all kinds of other things that pop up. We've had a couple of people, we're having 130 people from North Carolina out here this weekend for a wedding. Would you mind doing a walking tour to entertain them that morning or something like that? And anytime I can get out of the office to blabber about old stuff, I will. And so that's been really fun. I really enjoy my downtime. It goes through kind of a cycle. The spring, people are starting to think about summer construction projects, so we see a lot of design review come through the office where I'm telling people yes, no on these windows, etc. The summer is just really trying to stay afloat while everybody's on vacation, coming back, trying to get things done before the snow flies. And then in the winter I get to slow down and do some grant writing and some new development of historic walking tours and materials and stuff like that. So it can be varied. I try to get out of the office once a day for mental sanity, and but it's pretty easy. Somebody said the other day, could you lift 50 pounds if you had to? Yeah. Okay, well it's on your job classification. Okay. Great. The unexpected things you get rated on, I guess.
Do you all have some questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like with archaeological work, what would you guys get involved in, or how would one get involved in archaeological work? I
Well,
believe that'd be the better question.
well, in most fields, it's anthropology, and then it's linked with archaeology. My experience with archaeology is more collections management end of it. So I catalog and deal with the large catalog records, databases. I work with the archaeologists that are coming to the park to do excavation work, to document what they've done. But that's about the extent of my involvement with archaeology, are those cultural artifacts, and then the historic archaeology aspects of it is a little bit more tied to what these guys do. The SHPO, we hear a lot, again, SHPO is the State Historic Preservation Office. The government loves to put acronyms to everything, so I hear a lot of SHPO, which I had no idea what that was for a while until I actually asked. So I think archaeology, if it's something that you're interested in, is a good field to get into. But again, it's a lot of scratching in the dirt.
Courtney mentioned the National Historic Preservation Act, which has this stipulation that federal money can't, one branch of the government can't be trying to preserve something and another branch of government funding a project that would damage those resources. So there's something called Section 106 compliance, which is Section 106 of this law, and you oftentimes if there's a big federally funded project or even a state-funded project, consultants, historians, or archaeologists or anthropologists would get called in to, it really could vary in terms of what the work might be. One of the things that they're talking about doing right now is North Rouse Avenue. Is this going anywhere?
Yeah.
Okay, it might be top secret. I don't know, but I'm going to spill the beans. Anyway, they're talking about widening North Rouse to 4 lanes, and that would mean demolishing or eliminating, something like 25 buildings along the road. And so one of the things before they can do that and use federal money for that kind of a project, they have to actually study that environment to see if there's any kind of historical significance to those buildings, or if federal money is being used to develop some kind of a subdivision on vacant ground, it might be necessary to do some kind of cultural resources inventory to see if there are teepee rings or fasting sites or whatever the case might be that would be related to native culture. So there, as Courtney said, there's a lot of opportunities to do that kind of preservation work and dabble in archaeology or anthropology or working with the built environment or something like that.
One of the standards by which a place could be historic is if it's associated with a specific person, if it's emblematic of a specific architectural type, or if it's and this is the broad, big picture, kind of a BS one, if we can agree on that. If it's associated with events in our past, and you're like, well, then everything's historic, and you have to decide what's not. And then the last one is potential to reveal information that we don't know about, which is archaeology. And so, you might be able to go around, let's say, one of the missile silos in northern Montana that were just decommissioned in the early 80s and say, hey, guess what? This stuff's actually becoming historically significant, and what don't we know? What do we think we know, and what don't we know? It's really interesting to see some of the stuff that's been listed on the National Register lately. Like, who grew up in a split-level entry house? Come on, guys. National Register of Historic Places.
Oh, good God.
I know.
Wow.
I swore that I would be done with the field with the day that happened, and it was like 4 days into my tenure, so I'm a liar. But there's a lot of potential for projects when you look at what will happen in eastern Montana with the oil field development. I heard the other day Pontywood might go from
5,000 to 15,000. That's a lot of new roads. It's a lot of new streets. It's a lot of new sewer plants, and that's a lot of new archaeology that has to be taken care of, and cultural resources that have to be identified. So, I'd go out there.
Yeah, I'd go.
Come on.
I don't think I would. Other questions?
I'm looking through the prompts here.
I definitely, you know, are most of you, I'm going to ask you questions then. Are most of you at a place where you're getting ready to graduate and you're thinking about entering, is that why you're here?
Yeah.
You just want pizza? What is it? Why?
Just info.
Just info?
I'm a freshman, so
Yeah, okay.
brand new.
Yeah. And are most of you taking, you're all history majors, is that right? Some grad students and some undergrad? Is that true?
I'm looking for a minor.
What are you thinking? I mean, why? What are you thinking? I didn't mean it like that. No, what are you? Is it because you love history? Is that fundamentally why you're doing this degree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I think that you want to ask yourself and think about is how much do you really want to sell out in the name of getting a job? And I know I'm not joking, but I mean that really seriously, because for me, I mean, I know we've got to pay the bills. I mean, we all know that. But for me, it's as important to be devoting my life to something that I really care about and I'm really passionate about. It would be death for me to be an accountant or to do something where every day I was asking myself, why am I doing this? I don't love this. I don't see the relevance of it. I don't seem to be helping anybody. So if you're doing it because you love history, then you really gotta, I think, figure out a way to capitalize on that passion and just never stop learning, never stop looking for other ways to sort of do what you love and be what you want to be, and even if that means, you know, starvation wages for a while, I think it's worth it. If you've made this commitment and you're serious about it, I think it's important to you know, to have those tough conversations with yourself and say, what is it about the money? Is it about what I'm passionate about? And if it's about what you're passionate about, start thinking pretty hard about how am I going to do what I want to do and make a living doing it. And it's a tricky thing to kind of navigate and figure out, but it's a pretty important thing.
Just out of curiosity, how many people that actually complete like a history degree find work related to that degree, and how many of them go into like some other industry? And what are like, are they, if you don't happen to, well, I'll just let you get started with that.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, the career transition, you guys might know better than we do.
We actually do have data on that when we, and I'll get into this when we wrap things up a little bit. They do surveys every year of graduates and find out what they're doing, how much they're making, are they in their field, are they out of their field. And so when you guys all graduate, get that call, please answer those questions. So we do have that, and if you come down to our office, we're happy to share it with you.
What's your office again?
Career Services. We're down in sub 177, just past the Bobcat Grill.
I think I read a couple of years ago that over half of the heads of Fortune 500 companies were history degrees.
No way, really?
Because you.
I heard English.
What's your source?
I heard accounting.
Some kind of humanities related thing, really?
And no, I think it was a Newsweek article, and it was that primarily the ability to take large pieces of information and broil and understand all of the pertinent parts and kind of place whatever that piece was, but what's important, what's relevant, and what needs to guide us moving forward. It was pretty, I think I sent it to my mom, like, see? That wasn't a waste of your life. You know, Derek talked about the selling out thing, and there is a subculture, for me, of historic preservation, of people who got a preservation degree and they're either getting cell phone towers approved, FTC, Federal, is it Transmission Commission? Trade, yeah. Funds cell phone towers, which means Section 106, which means you can't build it on a historic farm view shed. So there's that section, and then there's a section of people who has a degree in preservation and are arguing against buildings being historic because somebody wants to tear them down and build subdivisions. It's just out there, you know, you make those decisions, and I am lucky that I didn't have to, because I would also not want to look at myself in the mirror every day. But I think there are good opportunities out there. Network, internship,
do as many various internships as you can. Mine were all with the city, and that worked out well for me. In retrospect, I would do an internship maybe with the city, the county, the Gallatin Valley Land Trust, which does conservation of open spaces, but a lot of that applies to historic things that, you know, really think outside the box and try to meet as many people as possible. And I have to say, for what's supposed to be the engineering and ag school, MSU has an excellent history department. I enjoyed it while I was in school, and then I left, and it was really, you know, Missoula is supposed to be the liberal arts school, and it's hands down, MSU's are better, I think.
Any last questions? No? Okay, if I can figure out how to get back up here, I'll wrap up things. There's actually a chair up here. Okay, this slide just kind of shows us the information on how education pays. The higher, what this says is the higher your degree, your education level, the less likely you are to be unemployed and the more money you make. So stick with it, stick it out. We have this is some of the information that we've gotten from the surveys that we do. Out of this sample group, this is our 2010 Careers Destination brochure, which is a brochure you can come get. It's kind of a summary of all the questions we ask, and then we have the more detailed information available too. We had a 50% response rate. 81.5% of the respondents reported being employed or in grad school full-time. 10.9% are employed or in grad school part-time. 4.4% are unemployed and looking. And then the group that I would like to be in someday is the 2.9% that aren't even looking. They're doing great. Our average salary by year and degree, this means degree as in master's, doctorate degree. As you can see, we have varying numbers of who answered our surveys. So it kind of gives you you can see how the economy is affecting things too. Interesting.
Are these straight history degrees or just?
No, this is just average over the whole university. Yeah. I do have some. Here's our history information. And I did break it out by those three options. There's a few other options that we just don't have enough information on. There wasn't enough graduates and not enough people that answered the survey.
So there was 20 people who graduated from the history department in
spring of 2010.
The actual number of graduates probably estimated within 45.
Out of all of them.
These are just
This would be the number of
respondents, right?
respondents.
Oh, okay.
But the total number of graduates in any given year is around about 50.
And then here's our in-state, out-of-state salaries. Clearly being in Montana, you're going to make a little bit more money going out of state if you're willing to go out of state, but you know, it's not, and this is not just history, this is the university, right? We don't have horrible outlook here in Montana, especially with all the oil industry. And then here's the location of our employed graduates by college. We're keeping a lot of our students in state, which is very good news for us. Especially for those of us who really enjoy what Montana has to offer, and we're here for a reason. 59% of the MSU graduates remain here in state after graduation. So that's it for our presentation. Thank you all for coming. One last thing I'm going to ask, not very many people got signed in on the sign-in sheet. If you could do that on your way out, that would be really great for me. We're not going to, blast you with anything.
I was also going to mention, my name's Ryan. I'm one of the academic advisors over in Gaines Hall. If you're interested in trying to find a minor to go along with a history degree, if you're not a history person and kind of interested in dipping your toes in, we're happy to help talk to you if you've kind of put off taking that math class until your last year and you're not sure what you're going to take, you swing by. We have information here. We're open every day, right now 8 to 5, on Tuesdays till 7 p.m. So certainly swing by if you have any questions. So.
Great support for you guys. Thanks. Thank you guys.